Today we're talking through the top 10 Primarchs that you'd most like to see return, and which one is the standout favourite by community vote. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about the return of the Primarchs to Warhammer 40k, something that seems almost inevitable that we're going to see more and more of them crop up as the years go on. So far, Games Workshop has released full plastic kits for Warhammer 40k for Magnus, Mortarion and Guilliman, each of which was really quite big news for their respective factions, and it's been pretty exciting seeing these demigods of war return to the 41st millennium. The community reception does seem to have largely been very good to returning Primarchs. I believe that some of them are Games Workshop's most popular kits that they've ever sold, with Mortarion in particular being one of their best-selling kits ever. Most Space Marine or Chaos players would love their Primarch to return, though I do think it maybe needs to be done at least quite carefully, as you're basically transferring great figures of Warhammer 40k from mythological demigods to the past to genuine models on the table with their own advantages and limitations, and I think that you at least slightly risk cheapening them by making them into plastic. I think so far Games Workshop has done quite well with them though. Guilliman, Magnus and Mortarion all seem like massive threats in their own right, and to be honest, after the first one started dropping, I was kind of surprised that Games Workshop has shown actually some restraint and not just made all of the others really quickly. I think it is inevitable that more will be returning. The Chaos ones have kind of never truly gone away, and there's plenty of lore that implies a lot of the Loyalist ones will be returning too. For choosing which one comes next, I think there's a bit of a balancing act between the Loyalist and the Chaos ones. For preserving the balance of power, you'd kind of not want the Loyalists to be completely outnumbered by multiple Demon Primarchs, but on the other hand, in the lore, all the Demon Primarchs are basically out there, whereas the Loyalists aren't. It'll be interesting to see if Games Workshop keeps the numbers roughly equal on both sides, or whether the Demon ones come back first. In any case, I thought it would be fun to see which Primarchs you'd like to see return next, so I created a community post on YouTube and asked people just to simply comment which Primarch they'd like to see next. I then manually put the votes together, giving us a rough top 10 of the Primarchs that people most want to see reappear. After the ones that didn't quite make it onto the list, Alpharius was the top voted one of these. Alpharius and Omegon were both believed to be killed by Guilliman and Dawn respectively, though of course with the Alpha Legion you never really know. Maybe they were killed, or maybe they're alive to this day. In any case, Alpha Legion isn't one of the best known and most prominent Chaos Legions, and I feel that Alpharius will be very low on the list. Next we had Ferrus Manus of the Iron Hands, who of course was beheaded by Fulgrim, so he's got a near zero chance of coming back as one of the most unequivocally confirmed fluff dead Primarchs. If they wanted to bring him back, it'd have to be something very weird and tenuous, maybe him leading the Legion of the Damned or something like that. Conrad Kurz was thought to be killed by a Calidus assassin, though there's no absolute proof that that ever actually happened, as the final moments of his death were never recorded. Again heavily implied to be dead, and maybe not one of the most popular Chaos Legions out there. Again makes the Night Torture a very low priority to return. Jagatai Khan was lost in the webway pursuing Dark Eldar raiders, and is maybe one of the least likely living Loyalists to return. There just don't seem to be as many people as interested in him coming back. White Scars just don't seem to have as much of a following as some of the other Space Marines. Finally, Horus the War Master himself is about unlikely to come back as you can imagine. He wasn't just killed, but destroyed body and soul by the Emperor, and you don't really get any more dead than that. While trying to do some sort of warp shenanigans to undo that might restore one of the greatest threats to the Imperium, it would also stamp on quite a lot of the most established canon of the 40k universe in general, and I don't think that that's something that they're likely to do. So with the lesser voted ones aside, let's jump into the top 10. In 10th place we have Lorgar, the first Primarch to fall to Chaos, the treacherous apostle of the Word Bearers. Lorgar received 4% of the vote, was known to have survived the Horus heresy, and now would likely be a possessed demon Primarch of Chaos Undivided. Despite still being around in the galaxy today, I think that he's one of the lower priority ones for Games Workshop to bring back, and I can't help but think that we're going to see the god-specific Chaos Primarchs before we see any of the others. I believe one of the last times that he was seen in canon was during a great fight with the Corvus Corvax of the Raven Guard, who'd been hunting and killing his word bearers within the Eye of Terror. He may still bear some scars from that encounter. In 9th place with 6% of the vote, we have Perturabo of the Iron Warriors, a master of siege warfare, and will now also be a demon Primarch of Chaos Undivided. I believe he's been very inactive on one of his fortress worlds for much of the last 10,000 years, and one of his last and most famous engagements was the Battle of the Iron Cage, nearly destroying the Imperial Fists and their Primarch Rogol Dawn, if it wasn't for the intervention of Guilliman and his Ultramarines. If he came back, I suspect that we'd see some strong Obliterator vibes with him, Massive armour and powerful weapons fused in with all that demonic goodness. Again, like Lorgar, I think he's one of the less likely demon Primarchs to return, at least until the god-specific ones are back. In 8th place, with 7% of the vote, is Sanguinius of the Blood Angels. Despite being unequivocally killed during the Horus Heresy, the winged majestic Primarch is very much a fan favourite, and I think that's why so many people wanted to see him back, even though, again, like Horus, his death is kind of central to the entire Blood Angels and 40k plotline as a whole, slain by the War Master Horus before his confrontation with the Emperor. Since then, that's been the defining characteristic of the Blood Angels, going mad with the death visions of their dying Primarch, and succumbing to the Black Rage. As cool as it would be, I don't think that they'll be resurrecting Sanguinius anytime soon, though if they ever did, the route that they'd likely go down might be some form of Imperial demon. They do have the mysterious figure of the Sanguinor who appears unbidden to slay their enemies, and maybe some form of Sanguinius himself could be the ultimate manifestation in that. Seems very unlikely though, and I don't think that the martyred Primarch of the Blood Angels will be returning anytime soon. In 7th place we have Corvus Corax of the Raven Guard, who had 8% of the vote, a brooding and shadowy figure with a distinct preference for stealth tactics, lightning claws and flight. He was last seen hunting and fighting Lorgar and the Wordbearers within the Eye of Terror itself, and the constant exposure to chaos was reportedly affecting his very flesh, giving him unnatural abilities and allowing him to transfigure himself between his flesh and a being of pure shadow and blades. There's no record of his death, and his current whereabouts are unknown, so he certainly is a Primarch that has the potential to return, though I still think that there are other loyalist Primarchs that are far more likely to come back before him, just given the popularity of the Raven Guard compared with some other chapters. In 6th place we have Rogol Dawn of the Imperial Fists with 9% of the vote. Proud, a master of command, and utterly loyal to the Emperor himself. Dawn was reported missing following a conflict with the Chaos Fleet during the First Black Crusade, when his ship was overrun by a Chaos force from a fleet many times his own strength. All that was found of him was his severed arm and fist, which has become a relic of the chapter and engraved with the names of the chapter masters that followed him. He might be in need of some bionics if he were to return, but still there's no absolute confirmation of his death, and usually in settings like Warhammer 40k, that means that there's no reason to think he is. He certainly has the possibility to return, though again maybe less likely than other loyalists. I think in particular he is unlikely to pop up just alongside Guilliman, as two of the Primarchs are maybe just a little bit more similar and not quite as divergent as some of the others. Next in 5th place we have Vulcan, who gained 11% of the vote, so we're really getting into the top community picks now. Vulcan's maybe one of the most distinct Primarchs in that he's a perpetual, unable to die, incredibly mighty, an expert craftsman, and perhaps unusually humanitarian compared with his brothers, caring about the lives of Imperial citizens for their own sake, regardless of what they're able to offer to the cause. Vulcan disappeared for some time, but re-emerged during the War of the Beast, and was lost during the cataclysmic explosion that destroyed the beast itself, though as Vulcan is unable to die, it seems pretty likely that he wasn't destroyed himself. If he returned to Warhammer 40k, he'd be very likely unchanged, and there's legend that he set his salamanders a series of tasks, powerful artifacts to acquire and uncover, and when they are found he will return to them. In terms of likelihood of release, I think he is perhaps one of the most notable of the more standard codex chapters, the ones that haven't had their own standalone codex, even if they did have a supplement book released. He certainly seems pretty popular though, compared with his brothers. In 4th place we have the headstrong and brutal warrior of Leman Russ, Primarch of the Space Wolves, and maybe one of the most likely loyalists to return. Space Wolves have had their own individual codex for editions now, have a far more fleshed out range than some of the other chapters, and in the background there's no indication that he's dead or even injured. His last act following the Horus Heresy was to leave with his retinue towards the Eye of Terror, vowing to mete out vengeance on his treacherous brothers, and to return in the Space Wolves' time of ultimate need. Of his guard, only Bjorn remained, and is one of the oldest living beings in the entire Imperium, now interred as he is within a dreadnought sarcophagus. If he has indeed been adventuring within the Eye of Terror, there's every possibility that he might have developed more wolf-and-like traits, perhaps in the same way that the 13th Company began to devolve somewhat when they were within the Eye of Terror for an extended period. In any case, Russ would certainly be a cool Primarch to see back, and a powerful force to have on the side of the Imperium. In 3rd place, with 15% of the vote, we have Angron of the World Eaters, perhaps one of the mightiest and most brutal melee combatants in the entire galaxy of 40k. Angron is known to be a still extant demon Primarch of Khorne, and notably brought the planet of Armageddon to its knees during the First War. We know that Angron has grown to monstrous size, and if he returned, I'm sure he would be on the scale of Magnus and Mortarion, an enormous demon Primarch of Khorne wielding a great axe, and a near unstoppable threat able to hack through anything that gets in his way with ease. As he's both one of the god-specific Primarchs and also one of the ones that is known to have been active at least relatively recently, it seems almost inevitable that he will come back at some point or other. Games Workshop have released the Thousand Sons and Death Guard as their own standalone armies, so it seems likely that when we get Angron, we'll also get things like Khorne Berserkers and unique Khorne Terminators, and perhaps fully flesh out the World Eaters with their own standalone codex. I can't help but think that he has the potential to be a truly spectacular model if he does return. However, the most popular Chaos Primarch to return would appear to be Fulgrim, who gained 20% of the vote. The prideful and twisted Primarch of the Emperor's Children. Fulgrim is a murderous combatant in melee, killing Ferrus Manus, and also the one who put Rabute Guilliman out of action for millennia. He's still very much an active demon Primarch of Slaanesh, and has been reportedly languishing on a backwater pleasure planet for much of the millennia following the Horus Heresy. There have been several hints in the lore that Slaanesh will have greatly corrupted him, gaining a horrific serpentine body, and much like his brothers growing to immense size. Along with Angron, Fulgrim seems almost certain to return, again likely alongside a full Emperor's Children release with new Noise Marines, and maybe some fun Sonic Terminators and their own codex. As well as being the top voted here, I think that there's some strong indication that he could be next. There were a few side story bits during that Gathering Storm series which hinted that he might be out and about again, although they weren't truly confirmed. In any case, it will be pretty cool to see Fulgrim and the Emperor's Children redone in full. Finally, last and voted first on the list, we have none other than Lionel Johnson, Primarch of the Dark Angels, who appears to have won the vote fairly convincingly with 26% of the vote. Certainly one of the more interesting and controversial Primarchs on the Loyalist side. He certainly has a rocky relationship with some of his brothers, previously having clashed both with Guilliman and Ross, and I'm sure that his character and mindset won't have been helped by the betrayal of Luther and the fall and destruction of Caliban. Out of all the Loyalist Primarchs, he would be the easiest to justify his return. In the past couple of Dark Angels codexes, they've essentially confirmed that he is indeed just sleeping on the fortress monastery of the Rock, supposedly to awaken in the Dark Angels' hour of ultimate need. I'm not entirely sure what constitutes ultimate need here. He seems to have slept through the Cicatrix Maledictum and all the chaos that's happened recently, but there really wouldn't need to be all that much justification to have him up and about again. And the Dark Angels, along with the Space Wolves, are one of the most prominent Space Marine chapters. Again, they've got a huge range, and they've had their own standalone codex for editions now. There's also been quite a lot of backstory about Luther escaping the Rock and gathering the Fallen together in a great army. And if anything could encourage the Lion to come back again, then Luther returning to assail the chapter anew seems like it could be the catalyst. So anyway, let me know which Primarch you'd like to see next down in the comments, or which ones that you think that Games Workshop will release first. I'll certainly look forward to having a read. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly keep the 40k content coming, though usually of a bit more of a tactics and gameplay focused nature. Finally, if you have been enjoying the videos I've been making, I would just like to mention that the channel has a Patreon page which you can find down in the video description below. Making all these videos does take a fair amount of time, and if you are enjoying regularly, any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain new videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry to the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.